Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at James Agee today.
Yeah.
And this whole question of, is there a link
Right.
between creative brilliance and mental illness?
Yeah.
And we're using as our source material his biography
Okay.
by Alfred Kazin.
Great.
And I thought a good place to start
Yeah.
would be with this incredible anecdote
Yeah.
that Kazin opens with, which is
Yeah.
Agee clinging to his office window,
Oh, yeah.
50 stories above the ground.
Right.
Just kind of gives you chills, right?
Wow. Yeah. That's
How about a glimpse into despair?
yeah. No, it's a powerful image to start with for sure.
Yeah. So let's rewind a little bit.
Okay.
Let's go back to his childhood.
Yeah.
What kind of foundation are we working with here?
Well, when he was just 6 years old, his father died in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And his mother, she believed that it was actually divine punishment for something his father had done. So can you imagine that on top of grief,
Yeah.
guilt, and confusion?
I mean, that's a lot for anybody to process,
Yeah.
let alone a 6-year-old.
Right.
I mean, did he ever talk about his father's death in his writing?
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah. For example, in his poetry collection, Permit Me Voyage,
Awesome.
there's, recurring images of absence and this father who is both deeply loved and somehow responsible
Right.
for his own demise. And it's a thread that kind of, goes through a lot of his work.
So even in his early creative endeavors, he was grappling with these big,
Yeah,
heavy themes.
absolutely.
Yeah. Did he find solace in his art?
It seems so. He was exceptionally gifted,
Okay.
excelling in writing, and, he loved music and literature.
Right.
So imagine him at boarding school, channeling those emotions
Yeah.
into poetry and prose.
Yeah, it's like he was building a world of words to contain all those feelings.
Yeah, exactly. His mentor at boarding school, Father Fly, he said that Agee was the most brilliant boy I've ever taught.
Wow.
He recognized his talent immediately. And it's almost as if Agee was using writing as a way to process his experiences, connect with his deceased father.
It's kind of a beautiful thing
Yeah.
to think about,
Yeah.
finding that kind of solace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But we have to be careful, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this whole tortured artist thing,
Right.
it can be kind of a slippery slope.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not about romanticizing mental illness or, saying it's a prerequisite for genius. We have to be careful
Right. Of course, yeah.
about generalizing.
So where do we go from here? We've got this childhood trauma, which is
Mhm.
clearly a huge part of,
Yeah.
his story.
Right.
What are some of the other factors?
Well, his personal life
Yeah.
was a little bit of a roller coaster. His
Wow.
relationships, especially his romantic relationships, they
Yeah.
were very intense
Oh, really?
and often tumultuous.
Okay, so tell me more about these relationships.
His first marriage, for instance.
Okay.
He and his wife, Via,
Uh-huh.
they were really passionate about each other, but ultimately they were incompatible.
Oh.
Their relationship was full of, growing frustration.
That's troubled marriage.
Yeah.
Pretty standard fare for a creative type from a parent.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is how Agee dealt with those marital difficulties. He was looking for solace and connection outside of his marriage. Okay, he had affairs.
Classic infidelity.
Yeah,
And then didn't he have a son?
he did.
Joel with Alma.
That's right.
The woman that he met while he was working on Let Us Now Praise Famous Men.
Exactly. And that relationship was, just as tumultuous,
Oh, wow.
separations and reconciliations.
Yeah.
Agee clearly craved love and connection,
Yeah.
but he really struggled to find lasting happiness.
Yeah. It's like, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Intense emotions, searching for meaning,
Uh-huh.
this tendency towards self-destruction.
Right.
Is this all tied to his creative drive?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
We know that emotional turmoil can have a profound impact on creative work. Sometimes it can fuel it, sometimes it can hinder it.
So we've got this early trauma.
Right.
We've got these turbulent relationships.
Uh-huh.
Anything else brewing in this cauldron of creativity?
Well, his struggles with alcohol. He was a heavy drinker.
Okay.
And he often used alcohol to kind of numb his pain and anxiety.
But is that a cause or a symptom? I mean,
right.
was he drinking because he was this tortured artist, or was he a tortured artist because he was drinking?
It's probably a little of both. Substance abuse can be a symptom of deeper issues, and in some cases, it can be a temporary catalyst
Yeah.
for creative expression.
It's like playing with fire a little bit. You might get a burst of inspiration,
Uh-huh.
but you also risk burning everything down.
Right.
Yeah. So we've got this childhood trauma, turbulent relationships,
Yeah.
substance abuse,
Right.
a potent mix.
It is. And it's important to remember, we're not trying to diagnose AD.
Right.
Of course not. Beyond the grave.
We're just trying to understand his life,
Exactly.
his work, and how these two things were intertwined.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about his work,
Yeah.
specifically his early writing.
Yeah.
Did those childhood experiences, those darker emotions, did they find their way onto the page?
Absolutely. If you look at his early poems, for example,
Okay.
they're full of these haunting images of loss and this yearning for connection. And it's almost as if he's trying to make sense of his father's death,
Uh-huh.
find meaning in it,
Yeah.
in the tragedy.
Is there a particular poem that stands out?
There's one called Sunday, the Children, from his collection Permit Me Voyage.
Okay.
And it really captures this sense of childhood innocence lost and kind of this shadow of death, even in like the joyful moments.
So he's already wrestling with these big themes
Yes.
as a young writer.
He is, and you see those themes in his later work as well,
Oh.
you know, just expressed in more sophisticated.
So even as he matures as a writer,
Yeah.
those early experiences still continue to shape his art.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And as we delve into his later work, we'll see how those early wounds and those anxieties, they really inform his perspective on the world.
Okay. So to recap, we've got a childhood marked by this trauma,
Yeah.
a restless spirit seeking solace in love and liquor, and this talent for weaving words that just bleeds onto the page
Yes.
at a very young age.
Right.
And it's from here that we really start to see his literary career take shape.
It is. He's about to embark on a journey that will lead him to the Depression-era South.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a journey that will test his beliefs, his compassion, and his very soul.
All right. Things are about to get interesting. We'll be back in part 2 to dive into Agee's groundbreaking work on Let Us Now Praise Famous Men.
See you then.
Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. Last time we were, really starting to dig into the life of James Agee, this writer, just wrestling with demons and churning out these brilliant pieces of prose. We left off with him about to head into the Depression-era South.
That's right, yeah. On assignment from Fortune magazine.
Ooh.
Which is, kind of ironic when you think about it.
Yeah, explain that.
You see, with all this sensitivity and darkness sent to document, the poorest of the poor.
Yeah, it seems like an odd pairing for sure.
Right. A magazine that celebrates wealth and success.
Yeah.
Sending one of their writers to expose the harsh reality.
Yeah, what was his reaction to this assignment?
Initially, he was really skeptical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even cynical. He saw Fortune as like a symbol of the system that creates inequality.
Yeah, I could see that.
But something changed for him during that trip.
Really?
He spent weeks, immersed in the lives of these sharecropper families.
Yeah.
Sharing their meals, listening to their stories.
I mean, I would think that that kind of experience would have a profound effect on anyone.
Let alone, someone like Agee who's so attuned to the depths of human suffering.
It did, yeah. His writing from this period, it's just infused with this moral outrage at the injustices that he witnessed. He railed against the exploitation of these families and just, the system that kept them trapped in poverty.
So he's wrestling with his own personal demons.
Yeah.
He's seeing firsthand this, just crushing poverty.
Yeah.
And he's writing for this magazine that kind of represents the very system that he's, internally critiquing.
It's true. It's true. And he even went so far as to call journalism a broad and successful form of lying. He argued that it often missed the true essence of human experience.
Wow. Did Fortune ever publish any of his work from this?
They didn't.
Yeah.
His manuscript went so far beyond the typical magazine article.
Right.
He wasn't just reporting the facts. He was crafting this literary masterpiece.
So that's how we got Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, right? Exactly. Fortune rejected the manuscript.
Wow.
And Agee felt betrayed and disillusioned.
Yeah.
And he eventually found another publisher.
It's really interesting how Agee's own struggles seem to have deepened his empathy for the families that he was writing about.
That's a good point. His own experiences with loss and searching for meaning allowed him to really connect with the sharecroppers on a deeper level. He wasn't just observing them.
Yeah.
He was seeing himself reflected in their struggles.
Yeah. Let's talk about Let Us Now Praise Famous Men.
Okay.
What makes this book so significant?
Well, for one, it's considered, a really groundbreaking work of literary journalism.
Okay.
Agee wasn't content with just presenting the facts.
Right.
He wanted to capture, the fullness of human experience, the emotional and spiritual dimensions.
Give me a sense of what that looks like on the page.
Sure, sure. Well, he uses vivid imagery, stream of consciousness narration, and just this, lyrical prose style that really draws readers in.
Yeah.
He makes you feel the Alabama heat, the texture of their clothing, the weight of their despair.
It's like he was creating an immersive experience for the reader.
Yeah. Yeah. He wanted readers to understand not just like the facts of poverty, but like the actual experience of it, the emotional reality.
I've heard critics call Let Us Now Praise Famous Men rambling or self-indulgent.
Yeah, it's true. Agee doesn't shy away from complexity. He grapples with these philosophical questions about the nature of poverty, the limits of language, the role of the artist in society.
Doesn't sound like light reading.
It's not.
Yeah.
But it's, deeply rewarding if you're willing to kind of engage.
I'm curious, what was the public's reaction to the book when it was first published?
It got mixed reviews.
Oh, really?
Some critics praised it for its prose and its portrayal of poverty, but others thought it was too experimental or personal.
So was it just ahead of its time?
In many ways, yes.
Yeah.
But its reputation has grown over the years.
Okay.
And it's now considered a classic.
It's amazing to me how he could go from writing about, the business world for Fortune to this raw and powerful book about poverty.
That's Agee,
Yeah.
Full of contradictions, constantly pushing boundaries in his life and in his art.
It's almost like he needed both of those experiences, that detachment of Fortune and the empathy of let us now praise famous men to become the writer that he was.
Interesting take.
And speaking of different worlds, we can't forget his love for film.
Of course not. It wasn't just a hobby for him. It was like another outlet for his creative exploration.
So he had this, literary genius side.
Yeah.
But he was also deeply involved in cinema.
Yeah.
How did he approach film criticism?
Well, he brought the same intellectual rigor and emotional depth to it as he did to his writing.
Okay.
He wasn't interested in just reviewing movies. He wanted to explore, the deeper meaning of it, their artistic and social implications, their potential.
So he was like a philosopher of film.
Exactly. He saw film as a powerful art form.
Okay.
Capable of moving people, making them think, challenging their perceptions.
Did he have any favorite filmmakers or films?
He was a huge admirer of Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, really?
He saw in Chaplin's films a reflection of human struggle.
Interesting.
The search for meaning.
Right.
In a world that often felt meaningless.
That sounds familiar.
Right. Like Agee's own life and work.
Yeah.
Both Agee and Chaplin, they were attuned to the, the complexities of human experience, the fragility of happiness,
The inevitability of suffering.
Exactly. And both of them, used their art to explore those things.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Agee's early trauma, his relationships, his work on Let Us Now Praise Famous Men. And now his, passion for film.
Right.
And we keep seeing these recurring themes, the search for meaning, the struggle, the power of art.
Yes.
It's like we're piecing together this puzzle, trying to understand this complex and brilliant mind.
And as we move into the final part, we'll see how these themes continue to play out in his later years.
All right, sounds good. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve into Agee's later work as a screenwriter, explore his foray into television, and examine the legacy he left behind. Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. We're wrapping up our deep dive into the life of James Agee, this writer who really seemed to navigate the world with a poet's heart, but also kind of a restless soul.
Yeah, and I think, as we explore his later years, we'll really see how those two sides of him, the artistic and, the troubled, continued to kind of intertwine.
We talked about his love of film last time. And didn't he, eventually transition from just writing about movies to actually writing for them?
He did. He moved to Hollywood and started a career as a screenwriter. Collaborated with, some really big names.
That's quite a change, going from, literary journalism and poetry to writing screenplays for Hollywood.
Right.
How did he handle that transition?
Well, he, approached it with the same intensity and dedication that he brought to all his work, but Hollywood wasn't always the best fit.
How so?
Well, Aid wasn't interested in just churning out, those formulaic scripts.
Right, right.
He wanted to explore complex themes, kind of push the boundaries of storytelling.
Okay, yeah.
And, that didn't always go over well with the, studio execs.
All right.
Hollywood can be tough.
Yeah, for sure.
If you have a strong vision,
Especially if you're not afraid to challenge the status quo. But he did find success, right?
He did, yeah. One of his most notable collaborations was with John Huston.
Oh, wow.
On the film The African Queen.
Wait a minute, The African Queen?
Yeah.
The one with Bogart and Katharine Hepburn?
That's the one. And Akee's contribution to the screenplay was really significant.
Interesting.
He helped to create a film that was, both thrilling and emotionally resonant, So
it's his unique voice, the same one that gave us Let Us Now Praise Famous Men that also helped to shape a Hollywood adventure story.
Yeah, that's the thing about Akis. He could move between these different genres, different mediums, and still have that core essence, that deep understanding.
Did his personal demons disappear once he got to Hollywood?
Sadly, no. His struggles with alcohol continued.
Oh, okay.
And his relationships, they were still, pretty tumultuous.
It's like the brilliance and the self-destruction always seem to go hand in hand.
It's a tragic paradox, and in Agee's case, it led to his death at age 45.
45, that's so young.
It is. A heart attack brought on by years of heavy drinking and stress.
Wow. It's hard not to think about all the stories he could have told.
Yeah.
If he had lived longer,
Yeah.
all the films he could have made.
It is a tragedy. But, even in his short life, he left a mark on American literature and film. His work continues to inspire.
It does?
Challenge us.
What about that unfinished novel he was working on, Death in the Family?
Yeah, the one based on his childhood, losing his father.
Oh, right.
It was published posthumously.
Oh, wow.
And won a Pulitzer Prize.
Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Wow.
Just raw, honest, deeply moving.
It's like he poured his whole life into that book.
Yeah, all his pain, all his love, and in doing so, he created something that continues to touch people.
So here we are at the end, of our deep dive into James Agee.
Yeah.
What have we learned about this link between creativity and mental illness?
Well, I think we've seen how Agee's struggles, his darkness, they were intertwined with his art. But we've also seen how he channeled those experiences into something really beautiful and profound.
It reminds us that the human experience is complex and messy and full of contradictions.
Absolutely. And those contradictions, the shadows and the light, they're often where creative genius comes from.
It's also a powerful reminder that even with all the pain and turmoil, the human spirit can create. It can connect. It can find meaning.
It can.
So Agee's legacy is more than just his work.
Yeah.
Right? He challenged us to embrace those complexities.
He did.
To see the beauty in the darkness.
To find meaning in it all.
Well said. Well, that concludes our exploration of the Mad Genius Thesis through the life and work of James Agee. We hope this deep dive has, made you curious.
Yeah.
And left you thinking about this fascinating connection between creativity and the human spirit.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep creating.